Here at Creek Days, you might be wondering, what is a creek? Well, a creek is a small, moving body of water, like this. It's not as big as a river, so we call it a creek.
Whoa! Jay, I was wondering what a creek exactly is. Creeks are a part of something big, called a watershed, right?
That's right, Blanca. A watershed is a large area of land where all the water in it flows to the same place.
I wonder what watershed we live in. Hey Jay, what watershed are we in?
Here at the California Conservation Corps in Fortuna, California, we're in the Eel River Watershed. Man, I've been itching to get away from this office. Let's go on a virtual tour of the Eel River Watershed.
Where should we start first? I know. Let's start at the top of the watershed, or the ridge. The ridge of the watershed is what divides two watersheds from each other.
Here we are near the top of the Eel River Watershed. Behind me, everything that you can see here is part of the Eel River Watershed. The divide, or ridge line to the watershed, is just up the hill. On the other side of that tree line, the hill starts to slope the other way, downhill, and it's a completely different watershed, the Mattole River Watershed. But join us today in the Eel River Watershed.
Lower down from the ridge is the headwaters, the first stream in the watershed.
Now we're a bit lower in the watershed, and we found a creek. This is a pretty small creek with not a lot of water, and in the summer months it might even be dried up. Notice how steep the landscape is, here, still high in the watershed. We call this a headwaters creek because, like your head, it's at the top of a watershed.
How did the water get there in the first place? A lot of the water fell from the sky as rain, or in other words, precipitation.
Peaceful precipitation. Boy, I'm glad I'm not out there.
Many headwater creeks come together and become tributaries, small streams that flow into larger streams.
This creek, called Bull Creek, is a tributary to the Eel River. All the water that's in this creek now, soon it's going to be in the Eel River. And all the water that we saw earlier in that little creek, all that water came right here.
Wait a minute. I'm trying to think of the term when rivers come together. Oh, confluence.
At this point in the stream, the South Fork Eel River and the main stem Eel River come together and they become one river. We call this point the confluence. Confluence means when two rivers come together. Downstream of here is the Eel River, which flows directly into the ocean. Sometimes water in the watershed seeps into the ground. We call water in the ground groundwater. Also, water from the ground seeps back into the rivers. This keeps rivers wet during the summer.
The Eel River flows to the sea. Let's look at the estuary, where a river meets a large body of water.
We've made it to the estuary of the Eel River. The estuary is where the river meets the sea, and there's mixing of fresh and salt water, creating a dynamic environment. It's influenced by the raising and the lowering of the tide of the ocean. There's a lot of wildlife to see in the estuary. Birds, fish, mammals, including people. What do you see?
That was great. Thanks, Jay. I sure had a lot of fun on today's tour of the Eel River Watershed. On today's tour, we learned about a watershed and its components. At the headwaters is where water starts and flows into tributary creeks that then eventually become a river and flow into the estuary and to the sea. I'm super excited to continue to explore my local watershed. Now it's your turn. Learn about a watershed near you.
Well said, Blanca. I'm super excited for the next time I get to explore my watershed also, and I hope you all are too.